There seems to be more information available about the state of the environment than ever before, which is great for awareness of our shared concerns. But how do people really feel about sustainability? How is that impacting businesses that rely on travel and business travelers themselves? Our conversation today will help us learn more about how employers and their employees feel about sustainability and some of the actions that can be taken if you want to be part of the solution for our climate. I'm here today with Alexa Buffum, Deem's Director of Product and our resident expert on sustainability. And our guest speaker today is Dr. Sally Eaves, CEO of Aspirational Future and an advisor on Tech for Good and a soon-to-be published author. Ladies, it's an honor to be having this discussion with you today.
Awesome to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
It seems like there's more awareness among the public for the urgency around climate action. In fact, a recent survey of business travelers found that as work trips return, 66% of employees expect their employer to make sustainable options available to them. And nearly 3/4 of those travelers want employers to provide clearer information about the impact of their business travel. So Sally, I'll start with you. Do employees now have more influence over this issue? Why or why not?
I would say a resounding yes. I think employees have more agency than ever before, driven by different things. I think one is information and awareness. We've talked about conscious consumerism quite a lot over the last 12 months. I think the same thing applies to employees as well. People want to work for organizations that have that same value set, and sustainability is right up there, and compounded by the employment market at the moment. We have a lot of supply talent gaps. So it's more an employee market around employee agency for job roles, for promotions or hiring or moving elsewhere. And we're seeing people making choices around their employment, not just based on remuneration and not just based on flexibility of work, but about brand purpose. So if you're not delivering on sustainability in, for example, travel, you might walk away from that organization. So absolutely, yes, big agency for employees right now, I would say.
There was a study in BTN today that talked about how people are less inclined to take on a role with a company if they don't believe in its sustainability efforts. So I think we're definitely seeing that. So Alexa, when employees do get this information, such as carbon emissions, which you can find in Google Flights or even in our new feature, EcoCheck, which is an EDA, how are they using that? And, what are they doing with that information?
Yeah, so when we were thinking about building EcoCheck, we wanted to make sure that the information on carbon emissions was really upfront to the user as they were making their booking decision. So being able to see carbon emissions for flights and car rental and sustainability scores on hotels right in the search flow when you're deciding which flights to take or which hotel to pick, I think is really key, because you don't want to have to go off to another website, or it's not useful to see that information after you've made the selection. So it really needs to be during the search flow. And so that's kind of our first phase around the visibility of that information and putting that right in front of the consumer. And we're seeing that that's been really popular, and especially with younger employees. Like, this is an area, as you've both mentioned through those surveys that we've seen, this is really something that, especially for younger generations, it is very important to them, and it really is something that they're looking for, and they've grown to expect it. I mean, you see it in the Google Flight search. I was seeing earlier, I was buying something on an e-commerce site, and it gave me the option to offset my shipping. So, I mean, even outside of travel, we're seeing sustainability initiatives across the board. So it's really important to be able to incorporate these into a corporate travel program. And we've been able to do that with the EcoCheck launch recently.
Employers and employees seem to be on different sides of the issue right now. A survey found that 74% of employees will keep asking employees to travel for business, but about the same percentage of employees want to reduce their travel or make their travel less of an impact on the environment. So if there's an argument about who travels and when and how are there constructive ways to set people's expectations? Sally, I'll start with you.
That's a great question. I think, for example, the metaphor of a bridge is springing to the mind for me. One of the things I've seen is, for example, we've got more companies going out there with SDG commitments and being really transparent around that. Got more employees pushing forward to really make those sustainable choices. But sometimes there's a bridge in between where there aren't really clear guidelines of how to bring those things together. So I've seen a lot of people coming back saying, I'm not quite sure, have I got the permission to make those choices? Is it really clear to me? Have I got a budget constraint for that particular channel? If there's a cost difference difference, for example. So getting those guidelines to support employees and bridge that with those commitments, I think is really important too. But I also think maybe just changing the narrative around sustainable choices as well. I see a clear link between sustainability, safety, shared value, savings as well, when you put these different elements together. So let's create some data stories of impact from making these different choices. I think it helps, if employers, for example, are a bit more reluctant, you have those in place, it can really change a narrative about the impact you're making through those choices. So let's bring these things together, not treat them as separate silos.
And I think when you bring all those multiple elements together, it makes sense for a business, because they can prove that they are hitting their sustainability goals when they're working on all of these things in tandem.
Definitely, it's that move from, say, transparency to commitment, then to accountability, is taking it through to that maximum. And I think consumers and employees alike are far more aware, they're far more informed, and they can see the difference. So it really helps to move along that journey. So absolutely spot on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would just add into, I think that the communication aspect is really important, because what we've seen in some of the surveys we've done with employees is that they don't really know what their company's policies are around sustainability. So they want to make better choices, but they don't always know, am I allowed to spend a little bit more money, or am I allowed to take, maybe combine 2 trips together so that I'm not traveling as much? And so I think communicating that policy and being really clear on what the expectations are helps set a standard that then the employees can follow.
Can technology and design make an impact in changing everyone's behavior, whether it's employers or employees, and how or why would that be enough?
Yeah, so I'm maybe a little biased because I work in technology, but I think that absolutely technology and design can change people's behavior. And I think that's actually a really important part about sustainability and sustainability goals in companies is if you need to be able to communicate those goals, and you need to be able to give people the information so that they can actually change their behavior. And so one example from the product that we've just launched is we show information on carbon emissions throughout the booking flow. And initially when we were looking at it, we were thinking, okay, how do we show the amount of carbon? Do we want to show it in terms of kilograms? Do we want to show it in terms of a percentage difference? And so it's really thinking like, what is the best way to display this information that's understandable? Because if you just show someone, oh, this is 5 kilos of carbon, it's very hard to understand what that is. So there's 2 things we've done there. One is showing it as a percentage so that you can see, oh, this is better or worse than the average, but then also taking it to the next level of showing an equivalency so that it's easier for people to understand, oh, this amount of carbon emissions is equal to producing this amount of plastic bags, or it saves this amount of trees. So being able to translate that into a concrete item that everybody's aware of can really help people understand, oh, this is the impact of taking, this flight versus this flight, or taking a flight versus a train. So I think design absolutely helps in that aspect, and bringing that and making it really visible to the traveler and in a way that they can understand.
I think having examples, concrete examples, makes something that becomes very abstract. It brings it to life, and it helps you understand exactly the impact. So Sally, you have a long history in technology. What are your thoughts around this area?
Yeah, I think firstly from that design point of view, because I think you have to look at it from a whole life cycle point of view. So from design, I think ease of use really matters. Personalization really matters as well. There was some research I've just been involved in, and it was kind of saying familiarity with any new technology or new tool really matters. It needs to be as natural as a communication tool as possible to help people to use it. So I think that matters. And beyond that, I think it's visibility, measurement, and also integration. You can't have tools that are over here for one aspect, over here for another. You need to make sure it's truly integrated and, again, easy to use. But the dashboarding I'm finding really effective at the moment, and bringing different types of measures together, not treating them as separate entities. And again, data enablement. Data is the tool here that makes such a huge difference. It helps us get buy-in from stakeholders in terms of the organization, but also having the right type of process flow as well. Lots of roles are involved in these travel decisions. It's not just employee, employer, specific roles, travel managers, senior execs, etc. You need to get the right data to the right people at the right time. And I think the example of, active intelligence, making conscious decision making. So you've got everything. When you're looking at those different options, you can see all those different impacts from a savings point of view, sustainability point of view, time of journey point of view, etc., etc. So we need to bring it all together. We can't treat it separately. So from that point of view, I think data, tech, and all those different elements make a huge contribution, supported by culture, people empowerment, and skills. So it's not separate things, it's all these elements as one.
What activities, technologies, or solutions could make the biggest difference in reducing carbon emissions in travel? Alexa, I'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a lot of really interesting kind of innovative things going on in this space, right? So we see things like sustainable aviation fuel is becoming a bigger thing. And some of the companies that we work with have started to talk about, how does that play into measuring their emissions, and how does that play into like looking at flights or measuring flights? And so I think that's a space that's there's going to be a lot of progress in that over the next couple of years. Another one would be electric cars. This is obviously huge, and it's going to make a big change in how we travel. And we're just starting to see this impact corporate travel. But in one area that we're seeing it at Deem is we're launching a partnership soon with Uber for ground transportation. And Uber's making a really big push towards electric cars, especially in Europe. We were speaking with them recently, and they were telling us how 40% of their fleet in France is actually already electric cars, which is really impressive. And they're giving their drivers a lot of tools to try to get them to switch over to electric vehicles. So I think that's also a space we're going to see a lot of progress in, and it will definitely impact corporate travel. And then another one that's kind of an interesting one to think about is, during the pandemic or earlier in the pandemic, when a lot of us couldn't travel, we started using tools like Zoom. And so this had a huge reduction in travel, and this obviously then reduces carbon emissions. So I think there's other tools out there that you can use in place of traveling, and this obviously has an impact on reducing emissions. So it's just really finding that right balance.
Sally, you have experience with infrastructure. What do you think are some of the elements there that might be helping us with carbon emissions?
Yeah, I think the EV space is a really interesting example of that. And again, data is helping to change decision making and change the narrative. I mean, there was a big push in certain countries at the moment about new charging points and where to put them. And there was assumptions that, for example, put them at service stations on the motorway or put them at coffee shops. But actually, when you look at the data, that doesn't really make sense. You're not there for very long, for example. So, for example, the data is shown, partner with new housing developments, bring it, as part of your driveway and garage development, etc. So it's helping to drive decision making about the right infrastructure that will support the scale of EVs, which at the moment would be the scaling issue. So I think that's really important. We've got a new rise around low carbon emitting technology as well. That's making a big difference. And in terms of Google, and some other organizations as well, there's been a lot of investment around telematics, which I'm thinking is a great advance forward. And it's this link again between not just looking at sustainability, looking at savings and looking at safety as well. So think about logistics, think about Uber, for example, as we were just talking about there. If you've got the telematics in your vehicle, you can get lots of data insights about reducing consumption, looking at battery degradation, but also driver performance, preventative maintenance, helping to reduce accidents. All of these things come together if they're integrated and visible and used in the right way, supported by the right training as well. So I think we've got really exciting developments here that bring all these benefits together and not treat them separately, which I think is so important for the sustainability cause. We can show that we can really create shared value business here, benefiting business with efficiency, benefiting from safety, but benefiting environmental impact and brand love too. Again, some research I've been involved in, people are walking away from organizations in the travel sector and beyond if they don't see people really delivering on what they're promising. So I think it's a massive step forward, and technology is a huge conduit for change here.
Business Travel News actually released some survey information earlier today that talked about how people will no longer take a job at a company if they don't feel like they're approaching sustainability in the right way. So it's exciting to see all of these different things happening out there in the industry. And I think, I'm excited to see, as that progresses and as we actually make a bigger impact on sustainability. The pandemic placed a significant pause on travel, which had a big impact on the environment. In that time, there was a lot of talk about the environment and how there were fewer emissions. We saw wildlife in cities where in places we hadn't before. So what have we learned from this pause in travel, the data that was collected, and what can we do now that we have seen some of the examples of what happens when we travel less? Sally, I'll start with you.
So many insights have come from this period of time. I think just with my research hat on for a moment, I think firstly I would point out the closeness, the link between climate warming and air pollution. I don't think we realised quite how close that association was until the research we've seen coming out over the last year or so. So it really puts to the fore the acceleration we need to have around low carbon emitting technology. We need to go further, faster. I think we've shown the power of the narrative. Communication to collaborate, I think, is huge. And on that point of collaboration, collaboration. I think I'd love to use an example, if I may. There's something that was developed over the COVID period around vaccine intervention. So it was a healthcare initiative. It was called the HPC Consortium. We had the biggest tech companies of our time, so probably the top 11, government, civil society, individual scientists, local councils, education establishments, all coming together for that common goal. And we accelerated that innovation curve, in some cases by 18 months. It was a huge, huge impact. If we can put that model to play around other big challenges, other SDGs, like around sustainability and ESG, I think we can pay a massive dividend and help everyone and really accelerate and move forward here. So I love that as a collaboration model. And my final point would be agency. We've seen that impact every single one of us personally. So we can all make a difference. So we can all come together, I think, and really create a positive contagion of change here. So we can all make a difference. That would be my keynote here.
At Deem, we have a platform, Easier to Travel Anywhere, Etta. And so, we're supporting people to travel, and we know that travel is necessary. But I think what we're finding is that we have to be more responsible about the travel that we're taking. So Alexa, talk to me about your thoughts in this area.
Yeah, I think this is such an interesting one, because I feel like often before when we talked about sustainability, it felt like, okay, this is something that the government has to do or that big corporations have to do. And like you as an individual, you have so little impact on this. But I think that what we actually saw during the pandemic was that that's not the case. Like an individual not traveling, and when we all stopped traveling, it actually had a huge impact, and you saw it right away. I mean, I remember the fact that like the air felt cleaner, like as you said, there were animals in the cities that we had never seen before. I mean, it was kind of crazy how things just changed so quickly. And so I think it's important to remember that we actually do have a big impact, and that by making, maybe a small change here or there and reducing our travel slightly, or just changing the way that we travel or the way that we organize our travel, it actually can have a really big impact. And so what Sally was talking about with agency, that's, I think, the big takeaway for employees and employers, is that you actually can have a big change on this by just rethinking some of your habits around travel.
So Sally, what advancements are we making around measurement of ESG?
I think is a huge area. We've said it always, I think, haven't we? Measurement matters, but I think particularly around anything on social impact, it's always been the biggest challenge. It's always been the blocker to scalability, I would say. So we talk about ROI. We've done it in business for years, haven't we? Return on investment. What I've been working on with some universities and enterprise partners and citizen scientists as well is moving beyond this to ROSIE, so return on social impact evaluation. So it's a new index that's launching in about a month's time. It's going to help people make better informed comparative choices. So we see a lot of reporting, don't we, like ESG reporting, say once a year, but not more regular measurement and not consistency or standardization of measurement. So whether you're a consumer or an employee or an ecosystem partner, it can be hard to compare like for like. So that's what we're trying to do, bring this forward so you can make comparable informed choices. I think that's going to be a great move forward to help, scale measurable impact right across the ESG criterion. So I'm super excited about, bringing that to the fore very, very soon.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, Alexa and Sally, for joining us here. This was a great conversation, and I learned a lot. And thank you to everybody watching.